The Carolina Panthers finally have a playmaker at wide receiver and a brand new starting cornerback whose last name also happens to be Jackson. We'll break it all down right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Fridays throughout the offseason, I'm right here on the show answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me, but of course, follow me on Twitter at Julian Council for the weekly Friday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. The NFL new league year is finally here on Wednesday, March 13th at 4 p.m. Eastern time. All the moves that you had seen announced over the last couple of days became official as the 24-25 NFL league year has taken place and free agency has officially begun. The Carolina Panthers, as we know, have gone out there and they have bolstered their offensive line by signing Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis to start at the right guard and left guard spots, respectively. Austin Corbett's going to move into center. The Panthers have also begun their defensive rebuild by bringing in A'Shawn Robinson, who spent 3 years in L.A. with Ejiro Evero, the Panthers defensive coordinator. They've also brought in linebacker Josie Jewell to replace Frankie Louvu, who also spent a season in Denver under Ejiro Evero as the DC back at that point in time, calling it the most fun he had ever had playing football up until that point in time. And the defensive rebuild has continued today as the Panthers bought in a player who has the link to the Panthers general manager, Dan Morgan. But we'll get into the moves that have become official and the cap ramifications, some of the other moves Panthers made here momentarily. But let's go back to the big news on Tuesday evening. I've been live the last couple of nights on YouTube to start off the free agency period. Didn't go live today. Felt like it was still a busy day, but not nearly as, I guess, newsy as it's been for the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, Monday, Brian Burns getting traded, Frankie Louvu walking, going elsewhere. The Panthers handing out a $100 million contract for a starting right guard. Big news day. Yesterday, still the same case, and really the biggest news of the day did not come until about 7:23 Eastern time when I was live on YouTube, where the Carolina Panthers have traded for Diontae Jackson. The Panthers get Diontae Jackson and the pick number 240 in the NFL draft coming up. They gave up Donte Jackson and pick 178, which comes from the Robbie Anderson trade. So the Panthers basically received a starting wide receiver for a player that they were going to cut anyways, and what amounts to be a 6th-round pick. That's good business in my mind when looking at that trade. Felt the same way last night when officially looking at, when first thought when looking at it. Get Diontae Jackson, who can come in here, help out Bryce Young. You're only parting ways with a 6th-round pick. You're getting back a 7th-round pick. Not that big of a deal at all in my mind. Really, it's just a 6th-round pick for a starting wide receiver who Pittsburgh clearly wanted to move off of, and a player that the Carolina Panthers and Donte Jackson, they wanted to move off of as well. So pros and cons when looking at this trade. You get a player in Diontae Jackson who is an excellent route runner and somebody who can create separation, which is a big issue for the Carolina Panthers last season, as Adam Thielen, still a good route runner, but does not have the speed and twitch that he used to have early on in his playing days. You saw a guy like DJ Chark struggle to get open. Jonathan Mingo really struggled as a rookie as well. Getting an excellent route runner who can create separation, Diontae Jackson, is absolutely needed in Dave Canales' new offense with Bryce Young as a starting quarterback once again. in 2024. Johnson provides speed, twitch, and playmaking ability, which has been sorely lacking here in Carolina over the last year since they traded DJ Moore back on March 10th last year. Did not find anyone to be an adequate replacement. Yes, Thielen had a good season, but did not bring the kind of playmaking ability the Panthers got out of DJ Moore during his time here in Carolina and what he provided last season with Justin Fields as the quarterback up there in Chicago with the Bears. And I would think too that he's probably going to project to be the wide receiver 2 in Carolina right now. Hopefully he can right now, actually really looking at it, he's your top wide receiver. But as the Panthers continue to build that wide receiver position group, you're going to think that Diontae Johnson probably slides down to more of a wide receiver 2 role. But this is a guy who truly has playmaking ability, who's a younger player who, if he's going to be your wide receiver 1 for the time being, you're good with that. Makes a lot more sense than last year around this time where the Carolina Panthers brought in Adam Thielen, and Thielen was coming in to be that de facto wide receiver 1 of DJ Chark maybe being that 1B. So a 1A Thielen, 1B Chark. And we found out that really it turned out that Thielen was far and away the number 1 option at wide receiver for the Panthers last year, where you did not get a lot out of Chark, did not get a lot of Mingo and any of the other options out there. Just looking at his resume so far throughout his career, Diontae Johnson, he was a second-team All-Pro in 2019 as a punt returner. That was his rookie season. In 2021, he was a Pro Bowler, 107 receptions, 1,161 yards, receiving 8 touchdowns. That season, his PFF grade overall was a 77.9, 25 out of 128 wide receivers. His PFF receiving grade was 79.1. That was 23rd out of 126 receivers. Actually, this is from last year, where his PFF grade was 77.9, again, 25th out of 128 qualifying receivers. His receiving grade, 79.1, 23rd out of 126 qualifying wide receivers. You look at his average yards of separation. Last year, it was 2.9, right there on par with Adam Thielen. Had 5 yards after the catch, something that the Carolina Panthers receivers were not able to do. Had a 58.62 catch percentage. Compare that to what he did during his Pro Bowl season. 3.2 yards separation in 2021, 5.1 yards after the catch, which is pretty close to what he did last year at 5 yards, a 63.31 catch percentage. So his numbers really haven't tapered off that much. Now, his production has not been what it's been over the last couple of seasons because of the quarterback play there in Pittsburgh. Kenny Pickett has not lived up to the billing as a first-round pick coming out of the University of Pittsburgh. You see how he was benched later on this season, and they had to go to Mitch Trubisky, who also struggled. You looked at Mason Rudolph. He actually played pretty well in the final 6 weeks of the season for Pittsburgh. The quarterback play has not been great there, and a big reason why Diontae Johnson's numbers have gone down and why the Pittsburgh Steelers have struggled to be a team that can actually contend at a high level, which is what they're expected to do. Now, Mike Tomlin still finds a way to go out there and get winning seasons, never having a losing season in Pittsburgh. But we saw that has not been a high caliber offense under Matt Canada, who was finally fired in the middle of the 2023 season, which takes me to the cons. And I don't really look at this as being that big of a concern for the Carolina Panthers, considering that they really aren't in a situation to be worried about whether this is going to be a good locker room guy coming into Carolina. I think Dave Canales is going to do a good job of getting the culture that he wants. The positivity is something that you look at and point to, okay, this guy's got the right mentality. He's going to really get these guys who have been beaten down and lost a lot of games over the last 6 years, going to get them starting to believe in themselves again. So I'm not too concerned about a guy in Diontae Johnson who really, he's just frustrated because he wants to win, man. The Steelers are still getting those 9-8 records last 2 seasons, getting to the playoffs this past season, but they're not looking like the typical Pittsburgh Steelers that you're used to seeing. Now, of course, Ben Roethlisberger retired at the end of his career. He was kind of barely playing, only had like half an arm left, but still Pittsburgh got off to, I think, a 10-0 start. I want to say during that Pro Bowl season that Diontae Johnson had, and Big Ben is better than what the Pittsburgh Steelers have thrown out there the last 2 seasons at the quarterback position. So they don't have Big Ben anymore. They haven't had the continuity offensively at the quarterback spot. The offense coordinator, Matt Canada, is a guy who's been failing upwards for, it seems like, a decade now, and they finally moved on from him. This is just a guy who wants to win. And so there's been a couple of instances in the past where he got into a heated spat with Mitch Trubisky, who was a starting quarterback at the time. The Steelers ultimately benched Trubisky because he wasn't producing. Also, last year, there's an altercation between him and Minkah Fitzpatrick, who was a stud player for the Steelers, one of their captains, after a loss to the Browns. So Johnson just hasn't really handled his emotions in the right way. And honestly, you're probably sitting here as a fan thinking about, okay, he got mad at Mitch Trubisky. What's the problem there? Mitch Trubisky's not a good player. I absolutely understand that. I agree with you, but you gotta be able to rein it in and not necessarily have that kind of outburst with your starting quarterback, whether he's playing well or not. And that's one of the things too. Like I remember when Robbie Anderson was seen on TV yelling at Sam Darnold. Like it's not that big of a deal. The optics aren't necessarily what you want. You don't want to see one of your starting receivers yelling at your quarterback, but the quarterback's not playing well. They're all the receivers tell him is tighten up, play better. Like you are also someone that's be accountable for your play. We spend so many times where it's like, okay, the quarterback's yelling at the receiver, no problem doing that. You've seen like Aaron Rodgers do that, Peyton Manning, all those, Tom Brady. They're yelling at their receivers, but the receiver yells at the quarterback. Then it's like, oh, this guy, he's an attitude problem. This is a diva. You can't have this guy in your locker room. I don't really agree with that. Now, I do understand to like a certain extent, you got to, temper it down a little bit, but it's not that big of a deal to me. That just sounds like a guy who wants to win, a guy who had an excellent season in 2021, probably expected to go out in 22 and have another big year, even though he's playing with Trubisky, then a rookie quarterback, and he didn't score a touchdown that year. So you can understand his frustration. He just wants to win, wants to play at a high level. And of course, if he plays at a high level and wins, that's going to help him get paid. And this is a business. So he's worried about his business, and he's also worried about the team and their goals. So I'm not concerned about that at all, but that's something you can point out as a con to me. That just shows a player that cares and a player who, maybe needs to find a better way to show his emotions, but somebody that you certainly want to have in an organization where you wonder how much these guys have cared over the last couple of years as they continuously lose week in and week out. The second thing you can look at, which I don't think is really actually like that big of a deal now, looking at it, the drop history, because when I was live on Tuesday night, had someone come in and say drop problem. You look at it through the years for Diontae Johnson. In 2019, he had 6 drops. 2020, he had 13, which is a lot. 2021, 5. 2022, 7. 2023, 2. So really, it was 1 year where he had a bunch of drops. Then the next year, he comes out, only has 5, and is a Pro Bowler. And in the last 2 seasons, he had 9 combined, only 2 a year ago. Since that 2020 season where he had 13 drops, he has 14 combined drops. Not that big of a deal. Let's go ahead and compare DJ Chark last year, who struggled with drops. And I don't even know if they even counted all the ones that he had against Jacksonville as officially drops, with multiple opportunities in that game. They went down the field. DJ Chark, he could not come up with the pass. He had a 6.1 drop percentage last year. Compare that to Diontae Johnson, 2.3. Johnson had a 3.0 and 4.8 drop percentage in 21 and 22, respectively, after having the 9.0 drop percentage in 2020. So I don't think that's a problem that people should be really concerned about. It was a problem in 2020. Clearly, it's been nipped in the bud the last couple of seasons. You don't want to ever see drops anyways. Adam Thielen was the best receiver last year, and looking at Pro Football Reference, he had 7 drops, which is the amount of drops that Diontae Johnson had in 2022. So I don't think that's going to be really something that's a big deal. So the 2 cons I had, potentially being a diva, I don't really see his attitude, his way he's gone about things in the past being that big of a deal moving forward, and really if they're a big a deal in the moment at that time anyways, because of just this guy who's competing and expects more out of himself, more out of his team, and they weren't getting it. And then the drops really seem to be a 1 season issue for Diontae Johnson. So I think this is a great move for the Panthers. We'll see whether he actually comes out there and produces on the field at the level that a lot of people are going to hope that he will, and that's necessary for Bryce Young to be evaluated properly moving forward. But the Panthers need to go out there and find a playmaker, and they found a playmaker by giving up Donte Jackson, a player they were going to move off of, and also just giving up a 6th-round pick, which they got in a trade for a player and Robbie Anderson that they could not get rid of fast enough at the deadline back in 2022. That's good business. Cap ramifications. The Panthers got to pick up the $3 million roster bonus on Johnson and the $7 million salary. So that amounts to a $10 million cap hit this upcoming season. They do take on $9.7 million of dead money for Donte Jackson. That's kind of being a recurring theme. Some of these guys are getting rid of. Not a big deal cap-wise at all for the Carolina Panthers. And it's a 1-year deal to figure out whether Johnson can be a guy moving forward. I know I talked about it last night, and this is one of the things where your live reaction, it's better to kind of sit back and be able to go back and look at things as far as cap-wise, see what overthecap.com says to get a better understanding. Because I know last time I said, oh, maybe they try to bring his cap number down by extending him, which surely could still be a possibility, but I think the smarter thing for the Carolina Panthers not to kind of put themselves into a hole like they did with Sam Darnold that one time is to just let Johnson play, see what he provides actually on the field, and then they can start talking about an extension as this is the final year of his deal coming up here in the 2024 season. So Diontae Johnson, I give the Carolina Panthers certainly high marks for this trade, low risk. I think it could potentially be high reward as this is a player who's a former Pro Bowler and even an All-Pro as a returner, playmaking ability, excellent route running, and somebody who cares, man. Not a diva, just a guy who's a competitor and wants to win, wants to produce at a high level. So I like that. I think it's a good move by Dan Morgan and good move by the Carolina Panthers moving forward. Panthers also made a couple of moves that became official on a Wednesday afternoon as they brought in a new starting corner who also has a last name, Jackson. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front so you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees. Buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. While the Carolina Panthers parted ways of Donte Jackson on Tuesday night, trading him to the Pittsburgh Steelers for Diontae Johnson plus a 7th-round pick in the 2024 draft, the Carolina Panthers now have a new D-Jack as their starting corner as they have agreed to terms with former Buffalo Bills cornerback Dane Jackson, signing a 2-year deal worth up to $14.5 million. Jackson started 28 games over 4 seasons in Buffalo, a former 7th-round pick who has fought to stay in the league and served as the Bills' 3rd corner last year and was a primary starter for the Bills back in 2022 because of the injuries they had at that cornerback spot. This is somebody who Dan Morgan, back when he was in Buffalo under Brandon Beane, really pounded the table for late in the 7th round of that draft a couple years ago to get Dane Jackson, who went to Pittsburgh, a former Panther, to come to Buffalo. And boy, that was a great move by Dan Morgan to be able to take over the draft room that time, really advocate for this guy who came in and played some solid football for the Buffalo Bills, especially for a guy who's a 7th-round pick. A lot of times for me, especially when thinking about a 7th-round pick, which the Carolina Panthers just got when the Diontae Johnson, Donte Jackson trade, I try to say that fast 5 times, I kind of overlook it. Okay, 7th-round pick, that's great. This guy is going to get drafted, but he's going to make the roster. And in recent times, we have not seen a lot of 7th-round picks have success here in Carolina. I think Stan Thomas Oliver is really the only one who's been able to stick over the last couple of seasons, but he didn't make the team recently under Frank Reich, and this former coaching staff that was here in Carolina. Now Dane Jackson, though, this is somebody who has really scratched and clawed to stick around in the league and to be able to be a starter for the Buffalo Bills at points in time over the last 4 years, and now to earn starters money here in Carolina, playing for a guy who really was a key part of him going to Buffalo in the first place. Looking at his stats in 2023, Dane Johnson's overall PFF grade was 62.7. That was 71st out of 127 corners. His coverage grade was a 69.7. That was 42nd out of 126 corners. Run defense grade was a 28.8, 120th out of 121. So not great in run defense. You already had Donte Jackson, who's notorious for not being great against the run, but he had certainly gotten better and was more physical at the point of attack over the last 2 or 3 seasons than you had seen early on in his career in Carolina. So that is a little bit of a concern, but coverage grade wise, solid player that you're getting, especially for a former 7th round pick, a guy who's working as a 3rd corner. for the Bills the last couple of years. He allowed a 74.3 completion percentage last year, which is pretty high. 109.6 passer rating. Missed tackle percentage was 17.0. So those are concerning numbers there from Pro Football Reference. Again, 74.3 completion percentage, 109.6 passer rating, 17.0 missed tackle percentage. Going to need to clean that up. 2022, though, that's when he started 14 games for the Buffalo Bills. Overall PFF grade that year was a 57.5, 59.9 coverage grade, 47.9 against the run. When you look at his Pro Football Reference grades, a lot better than what he put up last year, a 59.0 completion percentage, 82.1 passer rating, and then 10.9 missed tackle percentage. So missed tackles, that is concern against the run, especially for Dane Jackson. He didn't play that well in coverage last year, just looking at Pro Football Reference. But if you look at his grades according to PFF, he was a lot better. Was one of the top 50 corners in the league that qualified at 126 when it came to coverage grade a year ago. I think this is an okay signing for the Panthers. Not a ton of money, 2 years. Worth up to 14.5 bill. I doubt that he sees all of it. There's probably a lot of incentives there for him to have to match, probably like playing time and just number wise for Dane Jackson to get that money. But the Panthers need to go out there and get somebody who could come in for a year and be a starter. I still feel like corner is a spot the Panthers need to address via the draft. And if they now got Diontae Johnson, maybe they want to spend 33 on a wide receiver, then spend 39 on a corner or vice versa, depending on where they are at that point in time in the draft. They do have both those picks by draft night on day 2 up there in Detroit in April. We'll see how things work out. But as far as just like a 1-year starter who the GM has familiarity with, a guy who's been a solid kind of rotational player for the Buffalo Bills the last couple of years, I don't hate this move at all. It's pretty low risk for a guy who come in and probably can be a solid starter for you, but not somebody that I'm thinking is going to come out here and like have a Pro Bowl season and really just be the guy who holds it down opposite of JC Horn. Still need JC to stay healthy, but Dane Jackson, a solid signing for the Carolina Panthers. Other moves the Panthers have made recently, Amir Smith-Marset, this came out on Tuesday. He's re-signed on a 1-year deal, was primarily the Panthers punt returner. Got to see him used as a gadget player late in the season in 2023. He does have speed, so interested to see how Dave Canales wants to utilize him. I don't look at ISM as being a guy who's going to be a major playmaker, but he did on Twitter. He's been pretty high on himself, which is good. You got to have that mentality to bet on yourself and believe in yourself. And he was talking about, hey, go out there and see how open he was last year. So if anyone's clipped it off, please tag me and send it to him because I want to see what those clips look like. Maybe he gets an opportunity in this Dave Canales offense moving forward. Adding speed is something the Carolina Panthers need to do. And that's a guy who was already here in-house, who can be a speedster for them. So we'll see how they utilize him. Raheem Blackshear, he was a exclusive rights free agent. The Panthers tendered a contract offer to him on Monday. He either has to accept it or not play in the NFL this upcoming season. So he's going to accept that and play for the Panthers. I think it makes sense. A guy who also is a kick returner for you on special teams and somebody who can be a solid third running back option. And depending on how things work out, Miles Sanders, maybe your number 2 back, but I think you'd probably want to add somebody else. But a change of pace, back with some good speed. Raheem Blackshear coming back to Carolina. Bradley Bozeman, Von Bell, and Hayden Hurst officially have been released. Bell, his release saves Panthers $1 million. It's $9.8 million against the dead cap as far as that goes. Bradley Bozeman saves $360,000 with $7.2 in dead cap money. Hayden Hurst saves $52,000 with $9.8 million in dead cap money. So it's a lot of dead cap money the Carolina Panthers are going to have this upcoming season. They're going to be among the NFL leaders in dead cap, but all necessary moves. Von Bell was a surprising one, really, as far as that being necessary. Surprised that they did that. They missed a couple games last year due to injury. Maybe they didn't feel like he was a scheme fit first time he played in this scheme. And maybe, I don't know, Morgan sounds like a guy who's just going to go out there and bring in talented players, and then we'll see if he fits in the scheme. Not necessarily totally concerned about that, but Von Bell, I would have thought that would have been somebody that Ejiro Evero would have had a say on, but he's gone after a season. Xavier Woods will stick around. The Panthers need another safety. Bozeman, I've been talking about how I feel like the Panthers need to draft another center. Bozeman didn't play well last year. That makes sense to move on from him. Austin Corbett's going to be the center moving forward, and Hayden Hurst. Yeah, I'm concerned about his health mentally as far as his brain with the concussions last year. But that made sense to move on from him, even if they don't save a ton of money and they're eating a lot of dead cap money. Robert Hunt, looking at his cap hit, it's a $6.45 million in 2024. Damian Lewis, 4.9. A'Shawn Robinson, 3.2. Did not see Josie Jules posted just yet on overthecap.com. As I click on that real quick, the Panthers have $19 million right now in total cap space, and that is not accounting for Von Bell, Bradley Bozeman, Hayden Hurst no longer being on the roster, and of course does not account for Josie Jewell as well. And it does account for Diontae Johnson. So some of the moves have been posted, but not all the moves have been posted. So the Panthers right now, at least looking over the cap, currently with $19 million of cap space, probably a little bit less than that, a little more. We'll see once that officially gets updated. There are still some remaining moves to the Carolina Panthers. We'll talk about those here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood is the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right. No cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most of your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. All right. Appreciate everyone who's hanging in there with me still. If you are still listening, I am not feeling my best today. Have not really all week. Honestly, was totally fine recording on the first 2 days of the week, but got here to now Wednesday evening recording this and not feeling too hot. So if you can tell, energy's low. I don't know if I sound weird, but yeah, been not a great week for your boy, but very busy week on the NFL. It's probably the worst time to have any sort of illness as we go through the first week of free agency. Going to have plenty more free agency stuff that goes on throughout the rest of the month of March. We'll even see some signings in April. Then, of course, we'll start focusing on the draft. Already got some questions for the mailbag about the draft. I'll tell you all this. We're going to talk draft. Going to have plenty of time to do that. Let's just wait. Let's keep looking at what moves they make here in free agency over the next about 18 days. We got 31 days in March, right? In the next 18 days. And let me double check that. Don't want to get that wrong. I should know that. I was born in the month of March. So yes, 31 days. So let's just wait the next 17 days or so. And then after that, once we get to April, we can start talking draft and figure out what the Panthers are going to do at 33, at 39. What are the needs? That's a big thing too. Like we look at the needs, like right now, offensive guard, no longer a need for the Carolina Panthers as they've signed Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis. They still need to add, I think, a veteran just for depth. If they can just find a guy on a cheap 1-year deal can come in and help them out, I'm cool with that. You got Brady Christensen, who's going to be your swing tackle, who can also play in the interior. This definitely takes some pressure off Chandler Zavala and Cade Mays moving forward, but I would like to find another veteran, just very cheap depth-wise, Panthers can bring in. And think about this too. It doesn't have to happen now. They can go through OTAs, mandatory minicamp. They can go through all training camp without having this. And then once the roster cut down happens, like we saw last year, they brought in Calvin Throckmorton. They can do something like that. But I still want to see a veteran to be able to back up Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis because we saw last year the depth was not there. Different circumstances because either Hunt or Lewis not going to win it. Either one of those guys goes down, you can immediately put in a player like Brady Christensen, or you can move Austin Corbett back there. They're going to have to find some center depth as Austin Corbett's going to play center in that scheme. I still would like to see them draft somebody, have them sit there for a year, ideally behind Corbett and learn that spot. Graham Barton at 33 from Duke. That's the guy I'm looking at if that's what the Panthers want to do. Corbett has been a center before, but in the offseason program, never played center actually in an NFL game. So we'll see how that works out. Linebacker, Josie Jewell's filling in for Frankie Luvu. Still needed some added depth there. You may have been thinking the draft. They tried to get somebody a couple years ago. And Brandon Smith, that did not work out. Maybe they try to find a long-term answer in the draft this year, as I would think probably the last year of Shaq Thompson here in Carolina, unless he's going to take like another reduced rate deal here to stick around. Not sure if that will be the case. Corner, Dane Jackson, that's a good start. He split a lot of outside corner. Troy Hill played a ton in the slot corner position last year. Still position that I think the Panthers need to add more depth, obviously, and they need to add, I think, through the draft. So we'll see how that works out. So that's one of the things about free agency. Need to see what moves they make before we can really talk about, hey, what are the big draft needs that the Carolina Panthers have? What should they be doing as far as who their targets are at 33, at 39, and all the other picks they have upcoming this year in 2024. The remaining needs, though, as far as like spots that really just have not been hit to my liking. Okay, so like Diontae Johnson, obviously that's a big pickup. I love it. Big, good business by the Carolina Panthers. Hope he can provide the Pro Bowl caliber play that he's shown in the past. Now, that was hope last year of DJ Chark, but this is a guy who I think is a much better player than DJ Chark. Chark has now played for Jacksonville, for Detroit, for Carolina, and another team. Like Johnson is leaving Pittsburgh because of, I guess, maybe attitude problems, if you want to call it that. But he's coming to Carolina. It's not like he's been a journeyman, and he could immediately become one if he does not play well enough here in Carolina, because he'll be on another team next year. But the hope is that this guy is going to come in, who's going to be able to create separation with his route running, who's going to be a playmaker for the Carolina Panthers, and going to really help out Bryce Young and his offense and get them moving in the right direction. But I do not look at him as like a true number one wide receiver. This has nothing to do with his size. I just don't think that production-wise, that's the kind of guy he is. He could be a really good number two for you, but I think the Carolina Panthers still need to go try and find that wide receiver one. And T. Higgins is still a guy I'm looking at who I would not mind parting ways at 39 and maybe a future pick in like day 3 to get him to Carolina. If that's what it's going to cost, of course, you're going to have to give him a big time contract. You got Thielen, who can play slot, who's kind of like a smaller guy. Johnson, he's, I think, 5'10". Mingo, yes, he has physical prowess. He just doesn't have the actual talent to do it right now in the NFL. Higgins is that big body receiver that you would love to have. And I know I had a conversation one time with people who were saying like the only way you can have a true number one wide receiver is if the guy's like 6'4", 215. And here I am basically saying that, but I'm not really saying that. I think that T. Higgins truly has that talent, and having him and Johnson with Thielen this year and then giving Mingo some time to develop would be an awesome situation for the Carolina Panthers, and especially for Bryce Young. But they still need to get a wide receiver one. Don't think that need has been fulfilled by signing Diontae Johnson, but that absolutely was a necessary move and a good signing for the Carolina Panthers. Edge rusher is by far the biggest need for the Carolina Panthers right now. They brought in Chase Young on Wednesday to visit. We'll see what happens with that. He's also supposed to visit with the Titans, who have been aggressive. They signed Calvin Ridley to a $90 million deal, which is nuts to see that happen. That's a team that's being really aggressive trying to get some players in. Everyone in the AFC South honestly has been. So he'll visit with the Titans and the Saints, a division rival for the Carolina Panthers. Jadeveon Clowney, he was in Baltimore this past year, had 9.5 sacks, had 2 sacks a year prior in Cleveland. It's been weird. Like since he's left the Texans, where he had 6 sacks and 9.5 sacks his last 2 years there, he really has been an up-down player. Didn't do a lot in Seattle. Got goose egg and sacks in Tennessee, played well 1 year in Cleveland, didn't play well the other year, played well last year in Baltimore. Just really been up and down. So we'll see if he can have back-to-back consistent season, which has not been the case since his final years there at the Houston Texans, but he is a hometown guy. Went to South Point High School in Rock Hill, of course, played at South Carolina with the Gamecocks, number 1 overall pick coming out of South Carolina. Good player. He has shown in the past. I felt like last year more of a name than an actual player. I was proven wrong last year. Mike McDonald's system. Maybe he wants to follow Mike McDonald out to the PNW, but he's already been out to Seattle. Maybe that's not his jam. So we'll see. He wants to come back home first to see if this is what he wants to do, and then he'll look at some of the other options. But he's someone who's going to come in to visit. I also saw that TJ Woonham, another former South Carolina Gamecock, expected to visit here in Carolina. So the Panthers need to get 2 new edge rushers, and it'd be nice if they could get Young and Clowney, 2 guys who have the pedigree coming out of college, and guys at least Clowney has produced, but like Young has been certainly mercurial in his career so far. Safety position, Tom Pelissero reporting that free agent safety Jordan Fuller is scheduled to visit the Panthers later this week. Fuller has 7 career interceptions in 48 games, 46 starts at the Rams, one of the top free agents still on the market. Think about it. Josie Jewell spent a year with Jero Vero, signed on Tuesday. A'Shawn Robinson spent 3 years in Los Angeles with the Rams with the Jero Vero. He signed. Now Jordan Fuller, someone who's going to be familiar with the scheme. I spent time with Jero Vero, who was a secondary coach out there in LA. He's now interested in coming to Carolina, at least to visit, and we'll see how all that works out. And then tight end, like I said yesterday, I guess it's Tommy Trimble season. Not quite sure what they're going to do there. Maybe draft somebody, or they're just going to stick with the combination of Trimble, Ian Thomas, Stephon Sullivan, and whoever else they have here in town. We'll see how that works out for the Carolina Panthers moving forward. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe and follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council. where on Friday, which is tomorrow, I'll be right here answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me to get those questions into me now. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole, and as always, keep pounding.